The entire restaurant burst into laughter. A tray had just crashed onto the floor. Glasses shattered. Food scattered across the polished marble tiles. And standing in the middle of the disaster was 23-year-old Ava Carter. For a moment, she couldn't move. Her hands trembled. Her face burned with embarrassment. The restaurant was packed. Business executives, wealthy couples, tourists, everyone had seen it. Some customers smiled sympathetically. Others weren't so kind. Several people immediately pulled out their phones, recording, laughing, whispering. Ava wanted the ground to open beneath her. Because this wasn't just any restaurant. This was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. A place where mistakes were remembered. A place where waitresses were easily replaced. Then a voice cut through the room. Loud, mocking, cruel. Maybe carrying trays isn't for everyone. The laughter grew louder. Ava slowly looked up. The man speaking sat at the best table in the restaurant. Expensive suit, luxury watch, perfect smile. The kind of man who enjoyed humiliating people. His name was Derek Lawson, and he wasn't finished. Not even close. Ava took a deep breath, then another. She knelt down and began gathering the broken pieces of glass, slowly, carefully, trying to ignore the stares, trying to ignore the laughter, trying to pretend her heart wasn't breaking. Then Derek Lawson stood up. The room immediately grew quieter, because everyone knew Derek. He was wealthy, influential, the type of customer restaurant managers treated like royalty. Derek adjusted his expensive suit, looked down at Ava, and smirked. You know what's wrong with people these days? Nobody answered, but he didn't care. He wasn't talking to them, he was talking to her. People want jobs they aren't qualified for. A few customers laughed. Ava lowered her eyes. She could feel dozens of people watching, recording, waiting, enjoying the show. Then Derek took a step closer. Maybe this place should hire professionals. More laughter, this time louder. Even some people who felt uncomfortable said nothing. Because that's what crowds do. When one person starts humiliating someone, others often join in. Ava swallowed hard. She wanted to defend herself. She wanted to tell him the tray slipped because another customer bumped into her. She wanted to explain, but experience had taught her something. Some people don't want explanations. They just want someone to look down on. Then the restaurant manager arrived. Ava's heart sank, because finally, someone was here to stop this. Or so she thought. The manager looked at the broken glass, looked at Derek, then looked at Ava, and immediately chose a side. I'm so sorry, Mr. Lawson. Ava froze. The manager didn't ask what happened, didn't ask if she was okay, didn't ask for her version. Instead, he turned toward her, his face hard, cold, disappointed. Ava. The entire restaurant listened. Office, now. Silence. Ava felt her stomach drop, because she already knew what was coming. And judging by the smile spreading across Derek's face, so did he. What happened inside that office would have broken most people. But Ava Carter wasn't most people. The walk to the manager's office felt longer than it really was. Every step felt heavier. Every second felt slower. Behind her, the restaurant continued buzzing with conversation, as if nothing had happened, as if her humiliation was just another form of entertainment. The moment the office door closed, the manager sighed heavily, then sat down. Ava remained standing, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, waiting, hoping, praying. The manager rubbed his forehead, then finally looked up. You embarrassed this restaurant tonight. Ava blinked. What? The manager leaned back. You heard me. Ava couldn't believe it. Mr. Thompson, the tray slipped because someone bumped into. The manager raised his hand, cutting her off. I don't want excuses. Excuses. The word hit harder than it should have, because she wasn't making excuses. She was telling the truth. But the truth didn't seem important anymore. The manager opened a file on his desk. Ava immediately recognized it. Her employee file. Her stomach tightened. 6 years. 6 years of arriving early. 6 years of staying late. 6 years of covering shifts nobody wanted. 6 years of loyal service, and somehow, none of it mattered. The manager flipped through the pages, then stopped. "You're one of our best employees." Ava frowned. The statement caught her off guard. The manager sighed. "I know you work hard." Now she was even more confused. "If you know that," her voice cracked, "then why am I here?" Silence. The manager looked away. And that was when Ava realized something. This wasn't about performance. This wasn't about the tray. This wasn't even about her. It was about Derek Lawson. Because Derek spent more money in one night than most customers spent in a month. And the restaurant wasn't willing to upset him, not even for the truth. Finally, the manager spoke. And the words that came out made Ava's heart stop. "Mr. Lawson wants you gone." Silence. Ava stared, certain she had heard wrong. The manager looked down at the desk, unable to meet her eyes. "Effective immediately." The room began spinning. After 6 years, it was over. Not because she failed, not because she was lazy, not because she deserved it, but because one wealthy customer demanded it. At that exact moment, a man sitting alone in the restaurant quietly stood up, and everything was about to change. Ava couldn't move. The words echoed inside her head, effective immediately. 6 years, gone, just like that. For a moment, she simply stood there, staring at the floor, trying to process what had happened. The manager looked uncomfortable, almost guilty, but not guilty enough to stop it. Finally, Ava nodded, slowly, quietly, because sometimes dignity is the only thing people have left. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the door. The manager didn't stop her. The moment she stepped back into the restaurant, every eye found her. People knew. They could tell. The whispers started immediately. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked curious. A few looked satisfied. And sitting at the center of it all was Derek Lawson, smiling, as if he had just won something. Ava lowered her head and continued walking. One step, then another, then another. She was only a few feet from the exit when a voice suddenly cut through the room. "Excuse me." The restaurant froze. The voice wasn't loud, but it carried authority. The kind of authority that makes people listen. Ava stopped, slowly turned around. So did everyone else. The voice had come from a table near the back of the restaurant, a table most people hadn't paid attention to all night. A man stood up, calmly, deliberately. No anger, no drama, just quiet confidence. Victor Carter, the same man who had been watching everything, the same man nobody noticed, until now. And for the first time that evening, Derek Lawson's smile disappeared. Then Victor Carter asked a question, and nobody in the restaurant had an answer. Victor Carter slowly stepped away from his table. The restaurant was completely silent. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Because there was something unusual about him. Not his clothes, not his appearance, his presence. The kind of presence that made people pay attention without knowing why. Victor looked directly at the manager, then asked a simple question. "How long has she worked here?" The manager blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" Victor repeated himself. "How long has Ava worked here?" The manager shifted uncomfortably. "About 6 years." Victor nodded. 6 years. Then he asked another question. "Has she ever been written up?" The manager hesitated. "No." "Has she ever been late?" "No." "Has she ever stolen from the company?" "No." The restaurant grew quieter with every answer. Victor took another step forward. "So in 6 years," he paused, "she's been one of your best employees." The manager swallowed. "Yes." Victor nodded again, then turned toward the shattered glass still lying on the floor. "And tonight," he said calmly, "you decided 6 years of loyalty was worth less than one customer's complaint." Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because everyone knew he was right. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time all evening, he had no answer. Victor turned his attention toward Derek Lawson, the man who had started everything. The smile was gone now, replaced by irritation. Then Victor asked the question that changed the entire night. "Do you own this restaurant, Mr. Lawson?" Derek frowned. "No." Victor nodded. "Then why are you acting like you do?" The entire restaurant froze, because Derek Lawson had never been spoken to like that before. And what happened next would expose a secret nobody saw coming. Derek Lawson laughed, not because he found Victor funny, because he couldn't believe someone was challenging him. In public, in front of everyone. He slowly stood from his chair, straightened his expensive jacket, and looked Victor up and down, the way arrogant people often do, as if trying to calculate someone's worth, as if money was something you could see. Then he smirked. "And who exactly are you?" The question echoed through the restaurant. Several customers nodded. Good question. Who was this man? Why was he getting involved? Why did he care so much? Victor smiled, a calm smile, the kind that somehow made Derek even angrier. "I'm someone asking a simple question." Derek scoffed. "No." He took a step closer. "You're someone who doesn't know when to stay out of other people's business." The atmosphere changed instantly. The tension became visible. Ava felt it. The manager felt it. Even the customers felt it. But Victor remained completely relaxed, as if none of this bothered him. That confidence irritated Derek, because bullies expect fear. And Victor wasn't afraid, not even a little. Then Derek made a mistake, a very big mistake. He pointed toward Ava. "She's just a waitress." Silence. Victor's expression changed, only slightly, but Ava noticed. The warmth disappeared from his eyes, and for the first time that night, he looked disappointed. Not angry, disappointed, as if Derek had revealed something ugly about himself. Then Victor asked quietly, "Just a waitress?" Derek shrugged. "You heard me." Victor nodded slowly, then looked around the restaurant, at the customers, at the staff, at the manager, and finally back at Derek. "Funny," his voice remained calm, "because every person in this room depends on someone they think they're better than." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Victor continued, "The people who cook your food, the people who clean your offices, the people who serve your tables, the people who open your doors." He paused, then looked directly into Derek's eyes. "And yet some people mistake position for value." The restaurant fell completely silent, because deep down, everyone knew exactly what he meant, including Derek. But instead of backing down, he laughed again. The kind of laugh people use when they're losing an argument, and don't realize it yet. What Derek didn't know was that the next 5 minutes would change his life forever. Then a black SUV pulled up outside the restaurant. And suddenly, Victor Carter wasn't just another customer anymore. Black SUV pulled up outside the restaurant. Nobody paid attention at first. Luxury vehicles weren't unusual in this part of the city, but then another arrived, and another. The restaurant grew quieter. Several customers turned toward the windows, confused, curious, watching. The doors opened. Men and women in expensive business attire stepped out, one after another, each carrying folders, tablets, briefcases, the kind of people who looked like they belonged in boardrooms, not restaurants. Derek frowned. "What is this?" Nobody answered because nobody knew. Then the front door opened, and a woman in a tailored navy suit entered, confident, professional, focused. She scanned the room. Then her eyes landed on Victor Carter. Immediately, her posture changed. She walked straight toward him, past the customers, past the manager, past Derek Lawson, and stopped directly in front of Victor. Then she spoke words that made the entire restaurant freeze. "Good evening, Mr. Carter." Silence. Absolute silence. Ava stared. The manager stared. Derek stared. Because suddenly, the man nobody had taken seriously wasn't looking like an ordinary customer anymore. The woman handed Victor a folder and continued. "The board members are waiting." Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Board members? What board members? Victor calmly accepted the folder, as if this was completely normal, as if powerful people approached him every day. Then he looked toward Ava and smiled, a small smile, but one that somehow made her feel safe. For the first time all night, Derek's confidence began to crack, because deep down, he was starting to realize something terrifying. The man he had just insulted was far more important than he appeared. Then Ava heard the woman's next words, and her entire world stopped. The woman adjusted the folder in her hands, then looked directly at Victor Carter. "We've been trying to reach you all evening, sir." The restaurant remained silent. Nobody wanted to miss a word. The woman continued, "The acquisition meeting has been delayed." Acquisition? Several customers exchanged confused looks. Derek frowned. The manager frowned. Even Ava looked confused. Victor nodded calmly. "As expected." The woman lowered her voice. "The board refuses to move forward without your approval." Silence. A heavy silence. The kind that changes a room. Because suddenly, people weren't looking at Victor the same way anymore. The board? Approval? Acquisition? Who exactly was this man? Derek laughed nervously. A forced laugh. The kind people make when they're uncomfortable. "This is ridiculous." Nobody joined him. Nobody laughed back. For the first time all evening, Derek stood completely alone. The woman turned toward him, confused. "Is there a problem?" Derek straightened his jacket, trying to regain control. "No problem." He pointed toward Victor. "I just want to know who this guy thinks he is." The woman stared at him, then stared at Victor, then back at Derek, and suddenly, her expression changed. Not anger, not confusion, shock, pure shock. "You don't know who he is?" The question hit the restaurant like thunder. Derek's confidence disappeared. The manager's face went pale. Ava felt her heart begin to race. Because whatever was happening, it was much bigger than she imagined. The woman took a slow breath, then said words nobody in the restaurant would ever forget. "This is Victor Carter," she paused, and the entire room leaned in. "The majority owner of Carter Hospitality Group." Silence. Absolute silence. Because Carter Hospitality Group didn't just own hotels, it owned restaurants, resorts, office buildings, properties across the country. And suddenly, every person in the room realized the same thing. Victor Carter wasn't just important, he was powerful, very powerful. And Derek Lawson had spent the last 20 minutes insulting him. Derek's face turned white, because he had just remembered something that made his stomach drop. He wasn't just sitting in one of Victor Carter's restaurants. He was doing business with Victor Carter's company. Derek Lawson couldn't speak. The confidence that had filled his face all evening was gone, replaced by something else. Fear. Real fear. The manager looked like he might collapse, because suddenly, everything made sense. Victor Carter wasn't just another customer. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a bystander. He was the man whose company owned the restaurant, the very restaurant they had just used to humiliate an innocent employee. Victor calmly closed the folder, then looked toward Ava. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant watched, waiting, wondering, trying to understand why one of the most powerful businessmen in the country seemed so interested in a waitress. Then Victor smiled, a genuine smile, the kind a father gives his child. And Ava froze, because she recognized that smile, a smile she had seen her entire life, a smile she hadn't seen in months. Suddenly, her eyes widened. No, it couldn't be. Not here. Not now. Victor took a step forward, then another, and another, until he was standing directly in front of her. The restaurant held its breath. Then Victor spoke. "Ava." His voice was softer now, warmer, more personal. And in that moment, Ava knew. The secret she had worked so hard to keep was about to be exposed. Victor looked around the room, at the customers, at the manager, at Derek Lawson, then back at Ava, and finally said the words that changed everything. "My daughter." The restaurant exploded into whispers. People stared. Phones appeared instantly. Several customers nearly dropped their drinks. The manager's mouth literally fell open. Derek looked like he'd seen a ghost. Because the waitress he had mocked, the waitress he had humiliated, the waitress he had called insignificant, was standing in front of one of the richest men in the country, and she was his daughter. Be honest. Would you have told anyone who you really were? Or would you have done exactly what Ava did? Because what she said next shocked everyone even more, including Victor himself. The whispers spread through the restaurant like wildfire. People couldn't believe it. Some stared at Ava. Others stared at Victor. A few simply stared at the floor, embarrassed, because they suddenly remembered every joke, every laugh, every cruel comment. Victor looked at his daughter, waiting, patiently. Then Ava surprised everyone. She shook her head, slowly, almost sadly. No. The restaurant went silent again. Victor frowned. No? Ava took a deep breath, then looked around the room, at the customers, at the staff, at the manager, and finally at Derek Lawson. I never wanted this. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was honest. I didn't want people treating me differently because of my last name. Nobody spoke, because nobody knew what to say. Ava continued. I wanted to know who would respect me. She paused. When they thought I was nobody. The words hit the room like a hammer, because suddenly, this wasn't about money anymore. It was about character. Ava looked directly at Derek, and now I know. Derek lowered his eyes. For the first time all evening, the woman he had mocked, the woman he had humiliated, the woman he had called insignificant, was teaching him a lesson in front of everyone. Victor's expression softened, because deep down, he already knew why she had hidden the truth. He just hoped the world would prove her wrong. Unfortunately, the world had proved her right. Ava smiled sadly. You know what's funny? Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. You treated me better when you thought I could help you. She looked at the manager, then at Derek. And worse when you thought I couldn't. The silence that followed was unbearable, because everybody knew she was right. And the truth has a strange way of making people uncomfortable, especially when they recognize themselves in it. Then Victor Carter turned around and finally focused all of his attention on Derek Lawson, the man who had started everything, the man who believed money made him important, the man who was about to learn a very expensive lesson. Victor Carter smiled, not an angry smile, not a revenge smile, a dangerous smile, because he had just made a decision, and Derek Lawson wasn't going to like it. Derek Lawson felt his throat go dry. For the first time all evening, he had nothing to say. No jokes, no insults, no confidence, just silence. Victor Carter slowly walked toward him. The entire restaurant watched. Nobody dared interrupt. Nobody dared speak. Victor stopped a few feet away, then smiled, a calm smile, the kind that somehow felt more dangerous than anger. Derek forced a laugh, a weak laugh. Mr. Carter, he swallowed hard. I think this whole thing has been a misunderstanding. Victor raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding? Derek nodded quickly. Yes. Victor looked around the room, at the shattered glass, at the customers, at Ava, then back at Derek. No. His voice remained calm. It was very clear. The restaurant became completely silent, because everybody knew exactly what he meant. Victor continued. You told us exactly who you are. Derek's face fell. And that's far more valuable than any introduction. The words landed like a punch, because there was no argument against them, no defense, no excuse, only truth. The manager suddenly stepped forward, clearly desperate. Mr. Carter. Victor looked at him. The manager immediately looked away, because deep down, he knew he was just as guilty. You fired one of your best employees, Victor said calmly, not because she deserved it, not because she failed, but because someone with money demanded it. The manager lowered his head, ashamed. Then Victor said something nobody expected. You're not sorry for what happened. The manager froze. Victor pointed toward Ava. You're sorry you didn't know who she was. Silence. Painful silence. Because once again, he was right. If you're still watching this story, think about that for a second. How many people are treated differently the moment their status changes? And how many never should have been treated badly in the first place? The restaurant remained frozen. Nobody wanted to be the next person Victor looked at. Then Victor turned toward Ava and smiled, a proud smile, the smile of a father. Ava. She looked up. Victor's voice softened. What would you do? The question surprised everyone, including her, because the decision wasn't his, it was hers, and the answer she gave next would leave the entire restaurant speechless. The richest man in the room wasn't seeking revenge. He was waiting for his daughter to decide, and nobody expected the choice she was about to make. The restaurant waited. Every eye was on Ava. Victor Carter had given her the power to decide what happened next, the power to get revenge, the power to make people pay. But Ava remained silent, thinking, remembering. The laughter, the humiliation, the embarrassment, the pain. Then she looked at Derek Lawson, the man who had mocked her, the man who had treated her like she was worthless. Derek couldn't even meet her eyes. For the first time all evening, he looked small, not because he had lost money, not because he had lost status, because he had lost respect, and deep down, he knew it. Then Ava spoke, her voice calm, steady, certain. I don't want revenge. The restaurant froze. Several customers looked at each other, confused. Surely she wasn't serious. After everything that had happened, after everything they had done? But Ava continued, because revenge doesn't change people. Silence. It only changes circumstances. Victor smiled, proud, because this was exactly who his daughter was. Ava looked at Derek, then at the manager, then at everyone else. I just want people to think. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Ava continued. The next time you meet someone, the next time you serve someone, the next time you work with someone, treat them with respect. She paused, then added softly, not because they're rich, not because they're important, but because they're human. The words settled over the restaurant, and suddenly, the lesson became bigger than Ava, bigger than Victor, bigger than the restaurant. It became about everyone listening, everyone watching, everyone who had ever judged another person too quickly. Derek lowered his head, ashamed. The manager wiped his eyes, embarrassed by his own actions. And for the first time all night, nobody cared about money. They cared about character, because character was the one thing money could never buy. Victor looked at his daughter, then laughed quietly. You always make the harder choice. Ava smiled. Maybe. Victor nodded, then placed a hand on her shoulder. And that's why I'm proud of you. The night should have ended there. But before Victor Carter walked away, he made one final decision. A decision that nobody in the restaurant would ever forget. The restaurant remained silent. Nobody wanted the moment to end. Nobody wanted to be the first person to speak. Victor Carter slowly looked around the room, at the customers, at the staff, at the manager, at Derek Lawson. Then he smiled, not because he had won, because his daughter had, without anger, without revenge, without becoming like the people who hurt her. Victor turned toward the manager. I have one request. The manager straightened immediately. Anything, sir. Victor nodded, then pointed toward Ava. Rehire her. The manager's face brightened. Of course. But Victor wasn't finished. And promote her. The restaurant erupted into applause. For the first time all evening, the applause wasn't for wealth. It wasn't for power. It wasn't for status. It was for character. Ava laughed, shaking her head, almost embarrassed. The manager smiled. Several employees smiled. Even some customers wiped away tears. Then Victor looked at Derek Lawson, the man who had started everything. Derek looked away, ashamed. Victor could have destroyed him. He could have embarrassed him. He could have taken revenge. Instead, he simply said, "I hope you remember this night." Nothing more, nothing less, because some lessons don't need punishment. The lesson itself becomes the punishment. Derek nodded slowly, unable to speak, and for the first time in a very long time, he understood something. Respect isn't something people earn because they're rich. Respect is something people deserve because they're human. The restaurant doors opened. Victor and Ava began walking toward the exit, side by side, father and daughter. The room watched them leave, and somehow, the restaurant felt different, as if everyone inside had learned something important, as if everyone had been reminded of something they already knew, but had forgotten. Never judge a person by their position. Never measure a person's value by their bank account. And never assume you know someone's story. Because the person standing quietly in front of you today may be carrying a truth you cannot see, and sometimes the greatest wealth in the room isn't money, it's character. The end. Before you go, be honest. What would you have done if you were Ava? Would you have chosen forgiveness or revenge? Rate this movie from 1 to 10 in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Billionaire's Affair TV, because the next story might be even more powerful. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.